experienced constant racist abuse and violence, often at the hands of nuns.
I was thrown into a bath of water and I was scrubbed within an inch of my life. Scrub the knacker for me was the term used. It's a very racist, horrible, negative term for a traveller.
Catherine did eventually escape industrial school, moved into a bedsit and fell in love. But her happiness was not to last.
Before that, I got pregnant. I found out that he had a fling with a young one, another girl. I went to social workers, and she said to me, "There's a place in Cork you can go to," she said.
Catherine was being sent to Bessborough Mother and Baby Home, run by the Sisters of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary. She was going back to an institution.
All the industrial schools, all the orphanages, the Magdalens and the mother and baby homes, they were all interconnected. And once your family was through the system, it was almost like you had a target on your back.
At least 900 babies and infants are known to have died in Bessborough, the last in 1994. But the burial places of only 64 are recorded. The sisters, whose convent still overlooks the grounds, claim to have no idea where they buried the other 800 or more.
Is just more deny until they die. I don't believe for 1 second they don't know where the burial grounds are.
The same order of nuns ran another home, Shanross Abbey in Rosscray, Tipperary. They sold the buildings in 2018.
It is actually the first time that any film crew have been allowed inside.
Teresa Collins was born here.
I'm just going to open the door. God, it's huge.
This is your first impression when you walk in.
It's like a stately home.
It is a beautiful house. But as you go down along, you'll see the secrets. There. Once you're in, you're in.
9 years ago, the sisters supplied the government with death registers, which showed that 269 babies had died in Shanross Abbey between 1934 and 1967. But an examination of the town's official death records reveals a rather different figure. In reality, over 1,000 babies and infants died in the home.
Each mother came in was never called by their own name. They always had a house name.
In Bessborough, 1989, I was told inside my name was Jane. Besides, for taking my culture from me, my family away from me, they took my name.
Their identity was taken away, their human rights was taken away, their hair was taken away, their clothes was taken away. Prisoners got better treatment.
The nuns imposed a regime of relentless, back-breaking work in the fields and indoors.
Maggie, my mother, remembers being heavily pregnant, and she remembers the length of the halls she had to scrub. That was just a never-ending job.
Every one of them was brought downstairs. As we say, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Now, as far as we can gather, this was the delivery suite. The reason being down here is so quiet.
There would be no pain relief allowed and no pain relief available.
The pain of childbirth would be part of your sin and atonement. If you're in pain, tough.
You're nothing. You're dirt, right? Whispering in your ear when you're given a horrendous birth, a breech birth. Well, was it worth your 2 minutes of pleasure? Your child is spawn of the devil.
In Castle Pollard, where over 220 babies are known to have died, survivors speak of the screaming room, an outhouse where mothers in labour were taken when their cries of agony got too loud.
So the baby would be born then. She would be allowed a few days rest with the baby, but then it was back to work. And from that point, She'd only be allowed to see the baby to breastfeed the baby. So it was just, to me, not to be crude, bringing in the cows for milking.
Mothers were usually compelled to stay in the home for a year or more, working unpaid to feed their child and in penance for their sin.
A woman has a baby out of wedlock, she commits a mortal sin. Can you imagine a mortal sin? A murderer, when they commit murder, in the eyes of the church, commits a mortal sin. You're on par with a murderer, damned to hell and hellfire.
And when their time of penance was up, they were cast out and made to leave their children behind. Julia Devaney lived with the nuns in Tuam from 1926, when she was just 8, until the home closed in 1961. And when she left, she recalled the suffering of the young mothers.
It was like Our Lady waiting for the crucifixion of God. They didn't see any future in the child, just a year, and they knew that, and sure, that was enough to break their hearts, wasn't it? Oh, it was a house of tears. It was an awful house of sorrow.
When my mother actually left, it was in the middle of the biggest snowstorm we ever had in Ireland. I have this picture of her walking down the road with her suitcase, having to leave her baby behind.
Anna doesn't know if her mother was ever given news of John, the son she left behind. But we do have a description of him. It's from a government inspector who visited Tuam shortly afterwards.
A miserable, emaciated child with voracious appetite and no control over bodily functions. Probably mental defective.
Less than 2 months later, he was dead.
John was born normal and healthy. They starved him to death. There's no question about it. Emaciated, you're starving. Voracious appetite, you're not being fed.
The government inspector also noted that out of 66 babies born or admitted to the home in the previous 6 months, 21, nearly a third of them, had died. When Annette Mackay's mother Maggie gave birth to her daughter Mary Margaret in Tuam, it seems she tried to resist the nuns' rules.
Anybody who was cheeky or would disagree with the nuns or demand to see their child, they were the problem. So she was moved to Lochray Industrial School.
There, in early June 1943, just 6 months after she'd given birth, a nun approached Maggie with some news about the daughter she'd left behind in Tuam.
She remembers so clearly the day, pegging out the washing. The nun came, told her the child of your sin is dead, and let her go the same day. And there would be no funeral, there would be no more sighting of the baby. For my mother, it must have just felt like the baby just disappeared.
There are no photographs of Annette's sister Mary Margaret or Anna's brother John to remember their short lives by. There is not even a record of where they were buried. But all the evidence points to that septic tank by the children's playground in Tuam. Yet despite the litany of death and neglect the inspector had found on his visit to Tuam, he concluded,
The care given to infants in the home is good. The sisters are careful and attentive. Diets are excellent.
The nuns had got away with it. And across Ireland, with the support of the state and the church authorities, they would continue to get away with it for decades. In part 2 of our investigation into the mother and baby home scandal, we look at the fates of the babies, those who survived and those who did not.
The babies were just another commodity. That's all we were to the church.
We reveal the shocking treatment of unmarked child graves in one home, and we find dramatic new evidence about the possible location of missing babies in Bessborough.
This is a very definite area of interest. They are regular, they match what you would expect to find for an individual infant burial.
And we ask why, 5 years after the official commission of investigation was established, no one has been called to account.
They just don't want to believe that it happened on the scale it happened because it is so shameful. But the Irish state needs to accept this. This isn't going away.
We asked the religious orders named in this film to respond to the issues we've raised. Both declined to be interviewed. The Sisters of the Sacred Hearts said they were cooperating fully with the Commission of Investigation. In a brief statement they added, "We provided a service for these women. We did not create the society which contributed to such exclusion and pain." The Sisters of Bon Secours said only that they continued to cooperate with the Commission.
My brain, take up my message from the vein, speaking my lesson from the brain, and seeing the beauty in the pain. Pain, you make me a believer. Pain, you take me up, you break me down, believer. Pain, I let the bullets fly. The people up above, all the hate that you have seen has turned your spirit.